Welcome to the Salt Strong Podcast, disrupting fishing entertainment as you know it. Prepare to laugh. Prepare to get to know fishing legends in a whole new and unfiltered way. And on occasion, you might even learn a thing or two about fishing. Here's your host, Joe Simons. Like diamonds.
Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like diamonds. We are back. This is going to be a fun one. I got my boy Dan from Savannah, Dan Cantrell. A lot of people don't know this. He was born in Winter Haven, Florida. I learned that. That's the coolest fact I know about you so far. But this is going to be a fun one because Dan is one of our insider members, and there's nothing more that we love is to see guys and gals who come in and we're not taking the credit for this. We obviously put stuff out there, but it takes an angler to go out there and put some of what we're teaching to the test to kind of figure out their own area. And I've watched Dan, like literally just grow and literally become so consistent at catching fish. Now has his own YouTube channel, which is incredibly helpful. And now he's teaching others, which I think is the coolest thing ever. And so, Dan, welcome to the show, my friend.
Joe, what's going on, brother? Thanks for having me on.
So what's the backstory besides being born in Polk County? Where how did you make it up to Low Country and Georgia? And what's the whole backstory? Did you grow up fishing?
Yeah, man. So for you guys out at home, fun fact, me and Luke were born in the same hospital.
Yep.
Me and Joe were talking about it a couple weeks ago, and not the same doctor, but definitely a few months apart on our birth dates. So who knows? Maybe we were born in the same room. It's kind of a small hospital.
Yeah, it is. That's so cool.
Yeah, but the backstory on me, I didn't have a heavy fishing past growing up as a kid like some kids do. I grew up in Central Florida. I actually grew up in a town called Lakeland, right? So there's so many lakes, they decided we're going to name this place Lakeland. So I grew up just kind of with my dad and with my uncle fishing out of a john boat, kind of trolling for panfish, bluegills, stuff like that with beetle spins and hallow flies in the fall. And that was really about it. My cousins and stuff, they got into a lot of the bass fishing and stuff. I never went down that path. Now, me and Dad, we would go out and do some saltwater fishing out in the Tampa area, fishing around like the causeways and stuff like that. But it was never really, hey, we're going to go fishing. We're going to wake up super early. It was never like that, like it is now. I'm absolutely obsessed. It's insane. My little daughter actually sees me in the morning. She says, fish is the first thing she says when she sees me. But yeah, so that's kind of my childhood growing up. I was into other sports and stuff like that. So fishing didn't really take precedence on my life growing up. So fast forward a little bit, graduated high school, went into the Air Force, did that whole deal, got out. Then this was about 2007, 2008 when the recession was in full swing. Well, I found a way to work overseas as a government contractor in Baghdad, Iraq. Now, a little backstory on me. I am a firefighter. I do work. I'm a GS employee here in Savannah. So that's kind of what I've been doing for, the past 17, 18 years. So when I got over to Iraq, I was working with the Army, miles and miles away from salt water, like you wouldn't believe. Yeah. And I still kind of was interested in it. I started looking into it, researching a little bit. And this was back before YouTube really blew up. And then one day, this guy by the name of Chris Morris, Chris, if you're out there, give me a call, buddy. Chris shows up. Me and Chris start talking. We immediately click. Chris is from Melbourne, Florida. He grew up in Cocoa Beach. Yeah. And he is an avid inshore fisherman, right? So this dude absolutely turned me on to the thought of fishing, the videos he would show me. I mean, we'd talk about tackle and lures, and this guy could break down a reel in his mind and tell you exactly how many bearings are in what reel. I mean, it's insane. So his passion kind of became my passion just through general interest. And then, as you're contracting, you're making good money. So you have the money to buy some of the nicest equipment. So I would buy so much fishing gear and send it home to mom and dad in Lakeland. And mom would give me a call. She said, son, how much of this stuff are you going to be, I'm running out of room. So on my vacations, I would go back to Lakeland, visit my family and whatnot, and then head over to Cocoa Beach, Melbourne area, which is down there, Mosquito Lagoon area, the no motor zone, where all that fishing is really prime. And that's where I really started to cut my teeth in fishing. Now, you want to talk about a learning curve. Anytime you're new at anything, it's a little difficult trying to figure stuff out. But at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of information out there, right? I don't think Salt Strong was as much of a dominating presence as it is now back then at all, because I was all over YouTube. I mean, me and Joe were just talking about Blair Wiggins. Yeah. Blair Wiggins was my go-to when I was overseas, because we had plenty of time to watch videos and TV and YouTube channels and internet. And I watched so much Blair Wiggins and just trying to learn by what this dude's doing. And, he's not really telling much. He's showing you the DOAs. He'll push a DOA in a heartbeat. But telling you exactly where he's fishing and whatnot and how and the style, all we're doing, I'm just watching his hand the whole time. Like, what's this guy doing? What's this guy doing? So with that little bit of knowledge, with what little bit I was able to find on YouTube at the time, I took out to the flats. I had my nice St. Croix rods, my Shimano reels, and here I'm out there fishing. And I'm literally the guy that's out there fishing, and other people are driving by thinking, what is that guy doing? I'm out here, dude, I'm having a blast. I don't even know what I'm doing.
Are you catching anything?
Not really. I didn't catch. It took me, it probably took me 10 trips before I figured out kind of where the fish were. And the first time I stumbled onto it was with a topwater bait, red head, white body, a little Yozeri. And I'm just walking it, bang, I caught my first trout. It was a 19-inch trout. Unbelievable. Right. So the first saltwater fish I ever caught was a big girl.
Yeah.
And so from there on, dude, I was absolutely hooked. So then I had to figure out, how do I learn this? So I try to remember, okay, I caught the fish on topwater. So guess what I threw for the next 2 months? Topwater.
100% top. So did you ever go live bait? Did you skip the live bait and just go straight to lures?
I did, because I watched Blair Wiggins and I watched these bass tournament guys, and I watched them catching all the same fish on artificials. So I was all in artificial. And I didn't have any other friends really at the time that were fishing like that. Me and Chris could barely line our schedules up to where we're at home at the same time. So really it was just a lot of me out there just fishing around, having a good time trying to figure it out. So that takes me into my time back in Florida after the military. Once I was in Florida, and the reason I was in Florida, I moved back to that Melbourne area so I could get some new certifications with the fire department, re-up my EMT, all the basic stuff that we have to keep up with. Once I got all those certifications, it made me a little more eligible, started applying for other jobs in the GS system, and I got picked up here in Savannah. So now my life takes me to Savannah. Totally different fishing here in Savannah. It's insane, dude.
A little bit different. There's like no tide swing in Indian River, and all of a sudden you're at a 9 foot some days. Man. That's quite a shift.
Yeah, we're full moon right now. We're not quite 9, but last new moon cycle, we were every bit of 9 or more.
Ooh.
So, I'm out there thinking like, how in the world do I fish this? All right, let's go wading. I wade fish everywhere in Florida. As soon as I step out in the water, puff mud. I mean, immediately up to my knees, I'm thinking, I just lost a shoe. This is ridiculous. Scratch that idea. That's not going to work. So then I just, kind of start fishing some of the banks, and I found a couple spots that were, I'm catching a little bit of trash fish here and there. I learn about, live bait, some shrimp, mud minnows and stuff like that. So I'm just stumbling, man. That's all I'm doing is stumbling. I wind up getting a boat. Now I'm out there just wrecking my boat. I'm running into sandbars and everything else because no one's ever shown me how to properly drive and operate a boat when you have a 7-8 foot tide swing in a day. So where there's normally 8 feet of water, there's 0 water. But when you're new to the water and you see flat water, you're like, sweet, I'm good anywhere I go.
Yeah.
Until you get out there and you're running your lower units into some oysters or a sandbar. So there's a huge learning curve out here. And it took some time to really start trying to dial it in and figure out what's working, what's not, because the same spots that are good at high tide are terrible at low tide and vice versa. And it took just a little bit of that, experiencing that to figure out, okay, that's not going to work. So, man, where are these fish? And I say that in one of my YouTube videos, like, you get out there on the water, you got a boat, you got the best gear that money can buy. And you're like, man, I don't even know where to go. Right. So here comes Salt Strong. So I'm all over YouTube as always. And I start seeing you guys pop up, videos here, tips there. And I'm thinking, man, this is cool. Who are these Salt Strong guys? I look up your profile, go to your website, read the whole backstory, love your mission statement, absolutely in line with everything me and my family are about. And I think, well, let's give these guys a try. I think at the time it was like $10 a month. You know, you do the math, like you say in your videos, it's less than a cup of coffee a day. It's insane. So, and I joined you guys, and the day I joined, I was completely overwhelmed. I looked at my wife and I told her, this place is awesome. Like, there's so much content, Liz. Like, where was this place 15 years ago? You know?
So what year was this?
I joined Salt Strong probably 2 years ago.
Okay. Got it. That makes
right?
sense. Yep.
So I was struggling. I've been in Savannah about 5 years. For the first couple of years, I stumbled around. Then I got a boat. Then I started fishing a lot. And then I got frustrated because now I'm spending big money on boats and stuff like that. And I'm still not catching fish. So then I started thinking, I need help. I got to figure this out. I'm not going to hire a charter captain. I'm not going to go scope his spots. I'm going to figure this out on my own.
Yep. Good for you.
You know, so because that's what a lot of guys do.
Yep.
And you know what's funny? I get a lot of that criticism, or used to, on my YouTube page and some of the Facebook groups that I join and talk on and stuff. You know, some guys are always commenting, "Oh yeah, anybody can just, you know, jump on a charter for a day and mark his spots and go back and fish them." That's not what I do. I put the time in.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. But yeah, it took a while of stumbling to get to the point of finding you guys. And I tell you, Joe, what you guys and what I'm a part of now is it's life-changing for the inshore world. These guys that are on the fence about joining Salt Strong, get off that fence and join. Even though Florida water fish is different than the low country, you know, South Carolina area where I fish a lot, it's different. I get it. But there's so much material. There's probably 98% of the material you guys teach that is still applicable.
Yep.
You just find a way to take that little bit of 2% and apply it to your home waters. And there you go.
Yeah. And in the last 12 months, I fished in Georgia. You know, I was at St. Simon's Island, Brunswick area, not too far from you, and also Louisiana. And we used the exact same tactics. Yeah, certainly the water was different. Yes, certainly we had to be a whole lot more careful about where we were running in both places. Louisiana had crazy murky water over there, the bottom of the Mississippi. I mean, it's a serious flow. You guys have serious flow. That is certainly a change, but we use the same lures. We use the same type of thinking and presentation. We use that same 90-10 rule. That was one of our most popular webinars we've done is just, you know, trying to eliminate the dead zones first. So many people get in there, right, Dan, and like, oh, I got to find the fish. And I think the smarter thing to do, at least it was game changing for me, was to look at an area and start eliminating all the dead zones first, just whittling down, saying, all right, this is a whole lot less intimidating to say the fish should be in these areas based on what I know on trends and how fish behave and what they're looking for. Did you use that 90-10? I know that's a little more recent in the past year, I guess, since we've been pushing that. Was that an impact for you?
It is, right? So the way I talk about on my channel and the insider members for Georgia is I constantly remind them, you need to find 4 things: bait, current, structure, nearby depth change. If you find an area that has those 4 things, that is the key to successfully being where fish could be, right? It doesn't mean they're going to be there. It means there's a high probability that they're going to be there. You're using science of where these fish feed, are comfortable, want to be, protection, safety, all that. And you're putting yourself in that location. Then it just comes down to 2 things: timing the fish, because here everything's on a timing schedule because of the tides. And then really just putting your time, physically time in on a boat in that spot and figure out when they're rolling through. Are they there? Are they not? And then fishing really comes into play. But once you apply the science first, then that really eliminates a lot of the dead zones, as you say, and that puts you in that 10% area. So yeah, 90-10, absolutely.
Yeah. So I love you said that. Bait, current, structure, depth change.
Yep. Nearby depth change.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so just yesterday, Luke and I went out to film a podcast, and we had 40 minutes to film a 30-minute podcast. Like, that was not much time because a lot of issues that came up, trolling motor broke and all that. And so we're like, all right, we got to find, once again, you nailed it. We had to find bait first because we used topwater plugs. It was supposed to be a topwater edition. We're already like an hour late. We're like, you got to be kidding me. And so guess what? We went right out and we started looking near the channel, right where the channel markers meet the flats. So we're looking for that depth change, and we're looking for birds diving. the second we saw birds diving, we shut the engine off and we just started drifting with it. And that's where we caught the trout. And I think so many people, I think they overcomplicate it sometimes. And not to say that works 100% of the time, but it kind of does. If you can find those things, you're going to be in the feeding zone. Yeah, you might have to wait a little while till that right current comes by. Sometimes there is almost kind of like a dinner bell rings when it's just that prime time. But in most cases, if you can find that stuff, we even call it the 3 Bs is the other one that, the birds, bait, and boils. I mean, you're putting yourself in the right situation, which is enemy number one is dead zones, right? I mean, that everything else becomes easier, right? Your lure, bait selection, even your presentation, all that stuff becomes easier if you put yourself in the right zone. And you're doing a fantastic job. And once again, you're teaching it on your channel, which I absolutely love. That's what I was looking at on my other screen here. Yeah, man. That's the biggest thing that I enjoy, right? Is to teach and help people, right? So whether it's through my YouTube channel or the opportunity that you're giving me with Salt Strong, I dig it, man. I'm super pumped. Thanks, by the way, for everything you're allowing me to do. I'm so excited to come on board and bring the energy for you guys. But man, this education side is what's important because I grew up that way, right? So my dad was constantly teaching me. It wasn't just do this, rah. It was do this. Here's why, right? So it kind of turns a light bulb on. Then I get into the education side of trying to explain to these other anglers why it's so successful, because it's kind of the concept of you give a man a fish he eats for a day, but you can't give someone a spot and say, hey man, go here and fish. The trout are right there. Right. Not every day. He goes on the wrong tide. He's like, what the heck? Or he goes there at that spot at 11 o'clock when it's 101 degrees outside. What the world, Yeah. So I love the education side. I love teaching people. I love explaining what's going on. I have no problem sitting here and talking about fishing. I've had other guys approach me and say, hey man, can you come and give a little class on this? Or, hey, our fishing camp is getting started. Our fishing club, would you be willing to come down and just talk a little bit and kind of break these guys in? No problem. I love it. Yeah. I love the helpful side. And that's really what drew me to you guys, is you guys are so educational with what you do. It's not just hold up a fish, take a picture. Hey, look at me. I don't care about that. Bragging doesn't do anything. Help people learn what you're doing. Right. And let me address what Dan had mentioned about the opportunity. So Dan came to us and said just that, guys, I want to teach. I want to help out any way I can. And one thing that he noticed was, even though these same trends and the tactics that we're stuff, and we have 15,000 plus members, and there are members posting all over Georgia and South Carolina, North Carolina, and we have Wyatt up in North Carolina, who's our coach. Dan's like, I want to take over, it's certainly the Georgia area, maybe some South Carolina, and just be a helpful person, put my reports up every week, show people where I'm going, what's working, what's not working. And I love it because what I love more than anything are people like you who it's recent. I think once you get maybe a certain level, you've been doing it 50 years, you almost forget all the stuff that you've learned. Like, this is recent to you. And I love the fact, I love working with guys that don't have sponsors like us, that they're not beholden to just, oh yeah, you have to have this lure or this thing. Like, hey, here's what's working right now. Take all the lures or whatever kind of brands away. And like, this is what's working right now. And you've been so helpful. I mean, we keep getting messages from people who do join as an insider, and especially in Georgia, they're like, man, like, this guy is a godsend. And you're putting out stuff. It seems like every week. I know you have a newborn, so it's been a little bit tougher, but man, you're cranking out some good content for us. Thanks, man. Yeah. Let's all say thanks to my wife at home. She's being so patient with me. Yes. Lord bless her. So yeah, the content I put out, I try to put something out every week, right? So I just got over a back surgery, which was crazy. So it took me off the water for about, 5 or 6 weeks easily. So I was just trying to find a way to fill the channel with some content. So then I started thinking, well, what about a little bit of rigging stuff, or stuff very specific to our waters? Yeah. And I've kind of found a way to keep growing and taking little different avenues and whatnot with the channel. But thanks for what you said, man. Godsend, that's huge, dude. I love to get out here and fish, and I love to help. And it's Salt Strong, you guys, that have helped me get to this level, right? So if you're out there and you're in areas in the low country or areas that you think don't relate to what they're doing in Florida, and I can't even say in Florida because you guys are everywhere, right? Your footprint is spreading fast. And
I commend you for that. But don't think that what they teach doesn't fit to your region. If you really think about it and you find bait current structure, nearby depth change in the area that you fish, get these tide timings down, figure out, okay, different color lures for different color waters and situations, you can catch fish no matter where you're at. I don't care if you go up to Wisconsin and fish in streams. I don't care if you go over to the Pacific coast and fish up in Washington. You can still find fish based on these types of trends, because fish are fish, right? Only thing they think about two things: eat and don't get eaten. And that's really it. It's not difficult to beat these little fish at their game, especially with a little rubber fish imitation.
Yep. And guess what? When I went to Brunswick, fished the same kind of places. I looked for choke points that had lots of bait running through with a lot of current, right? And some depth changes. And that's where all the fish were hiding. It's the same thing. If you're, like you said, and you're in a stream, you're looking for choke points, anything that looks a little bit different where bait is going to be coming around and there's going to be predator fish that can hide there and pop them off. So I'd love to talk about mistakes. I think that's some of the most helpful tips. It's easy to say, here, but like, talk about just candidly, like what were, besides, maybe running into oyster bars and stuff and blowing out your lower unit, what were some other mistakes that
besides replacing a couple propellers as I go?
Yes.
Yeah. So the two biggest mistakes that really come to mind, and I was actually thinking about that this morning because I had an idea you were going to ask that. The biggest mistake that I learned new to this area and any area in particular is just because you see someone fishing a spot does not mean that there are fish there, right? Because there are so many people out there that are struggling to try to figure this thing out, and they're just a little bit of everywhere. Now, there's a caveat to that. If you find an old guy in a little aluminum John boat with a motor that you didn't think could possibly even get him there, and he's fishing, now mark that spot. Those old timers, they're not out there for their help. And the second big thing is don't get so caught up in lures, right? So when you go to Bass Pro, Walmart, Dick's Academy, wherever you go and buy your lures and whatnot from, don't get caught up on, man, this looks flashy. I saw this guy using this in this video. Don't get caught up in that. Find a couple lures that work for you and stick to it.
Yes.
Basic lures that I use. I'm a big Z-Man guy, mainly because of the elastic material. They last. They're not expensive when it comes down to how long they last. You'll literally get rid of that Z-Man paddle tail just because you're tired of looking at the thing. It's all beat up. It'll still catch fish.
Yeah.
But the big things I use is 4-inch and 3-inch paddle tails. Mm-hmm. I use a shrimp imitation. I throw a Miradine style suspending twitch bait, and I throw topwater. And if I'm fishing live bait or if I'm fishing out in the sounds where I'm trying to draw a lot of attention and get a lot of noise over, I'll throw on a popping cork. I'm not against the popping cork. A lot of guys that are purists around here and in the fishing world, like, oh, popping cork. I don't care. Sometimes you just want to get out there. You want to have fun. You want to catch fish. It's not, the popping cork's not for the kids. It's not just for bringing your mom or your grandparents out. There are guys. There is a guy, I forgot his last name. His name's Stan. He runs a charter out of Tybee Island. This guy is on the Redfish tournament. He will go out there with a Bomber Bay popping cork, Paradise Bomber popping cork, same one I use, and a Voodoo shrimp and win tournaments. Hands down.
Love it.
You fish in Louisiana, everywhere. And this guy throwing a popping cork. So if you're thinking popping corks are for kids, they're not for kids, especially in dark, murky water. You need to get these fish's attention. You need to get them over. You need to fire up that olfactory sense that I heard you guys talking about in your last podcast with Wyatt, and get some noise, get some smell, get all that going. But those are the main things that I use. So don't get so caught up in, I need 10 different types of suspending hard baits. I need a dozen of these things. I need a box of spoons that's got 15 different colors. You don't need that. You need to focus more on where the fish are, bait current structure, nearby depth change, 90-10 rule, and get out there and get something in front of them, right? And if you're there and you fish a spot and there's nothing there and you really fished it hard, you fan casted, you've covered all 3 water columns, there's nothing there, fine, move on. But don't think you need to go back to your tackle box and dig out this shiny $12 shrimp imitation with little trailers, and get comfortable with a couple lures and stick to them. And your brother does that too. I noticed that. He's big on that. I think that leprechaun jerk shad and that the slam shady paddle tail. but that's all you need.
Yep. He's got Slam Shady Paddle Tail. And by the way, I got an email from the president of Z-Man, Dana Nussbaum, today, and they're probably 8 days away from finally printing off all the 3 and 4 inch Slam Shady paddle tail. So it's coming back, baby. Finally.
Nice.
This whole COVID thing has been a killer. Like, we put that order in back at the end of February, FYI. Like, that's how far things got thrown off. So anyhow, I had to put a plug in for that because we're so pumped to get those back in.
Slam Shady. Yeah, I've got so many fish even in this dark water with that Slam Shady. It's insane.
It works. But yeah, so he's got Slam Shady Paddle Tail, a jerk shad, which is usually Alabama leprechaun. Sometimes the gulp one works well for the extra scent, and that same kind of watermelon green. And now he has that shrimp that he's been playing. That's Luke's whole tackle bag. The rest is, just hooks and lines and leader and other little accessories, but that's literally his whole tackle bag. And you nailed it. I mean, I think the most important thing is, one, focus on the spot. You gave some great tips there, and then become an expert, become a specialist. I mean, all those bass guys have it, right? When you see who wins a tournament, it's the guy usually that sticks with their confidence bait the longest. And you'll watch the guys who get frustrated, like all of a sudden you're breathing heavier, like you've really lost focus because you're in a end of the day and you don't have anything in your live well, and all of a sudden they're going to all 10 rods, and now all of a sudden they're not an expert at anything. And it's interesting when you look at the actual stats on the winners of these biggest bass tournaments in America. They're usually just using 1 or 2 lures and all day long, and they're just sticking with it and grinding it out. I'd love to ask you a question on knowing what you know now, and to really help someone, a weekend warrior in your area, Georgia, South Carolina area. Is there a perfect? I know there's never perfect, but if you only had one haul pass over the next month, is there a perfect moon phase, tide, time of day? Like, is there anything that you could say, all right, if I can only pick this one, and I had to, we're coming to town and we have the whole month to pick, what would you choose? Do you like incoming, outgoing? Do you like a certain time of the day, a certain moon phase? Like, what's like the best, the highest probability? I know there's never a perfect one.
There's not, because I fish for fish depending on, I look at the day and say, okay, I'm going to fish Friday. Where's the tide? Okay, it's a high tide. Cool. I'll target fish here. Okay. It's a low tide. Cool. I'll target fish here. I have different spots in my head because I've been all over this low country area water in South Carolina and in Georgia both. But if I was just a weekend warrior and I could find one tide and it happened to line up on a Saturday morning when 1,000 boats are out there, I would look at mid to high incoming tide close to the sound. And the reason I say that is because right now, especially if that tide could happen at daybreak, right? So we are in full summer trend right now. About 10, 11 o'clock in the morning, the bite shuts down because the water temperature, it warms up a little bit more. The fish get a little bit more uncomfortable, I guess you could say. And it just puts them in a different biological state, and they're not interested like they used to be. Now, it doesn't mean you can't catch fish. You can. You may have to change your techniques or change your location, but that mid-incoming tide is going to do a couple of things. One, it's going to keep you near the sound, so your dissolved oxygen levels are much higher. That salinity level is much higher because right now, rainstorms, hurricanes come in, it dumps lots of fresh water. And you have that freshwater flush that does affect the trout. The redfish don't seem to mind it as much, but the closer you stay to the sound, when that tide comes in and out, it circulates all the fresh water out and you're back to higher salinity water quicker. But it also brings in cooler water. So as that tide's coming in, these fish feel that nice cool water coming in and it charges them up. Like I mentioned in one of my videos, it's like being outside on a hot day and you step in the air conditioning in your car. You're like, whew, man. And that's what the incoming tide really does. Yep. So it gets them fired up, gets them excited about eating. And then the tide portion of it, which comes into play, is when that tide starts to jump up mid-tide or so, it's pushing up onto the structure. So these guys that aren't really cued in on nearby depth change are cued into, I know I got to look for oysters. I know I got to fish grass lines. Now that water starts creeping in to the grass lines, starts coming over the oysters, and it gives them an area to fish because the bait fish are going to the structure because it's irregular or different, is what I call structure. And it gives them a place to really kind of cue in on and fish. So mid to high incoming tide during the summer months, early in the morning would be the key. If you could find it all line up perfectly there without a heavy east wind that's not going to blow you around, because the sounds do get a little windy and get a little choppy. That's what I would look for.
How shallow are you fishing? And like, let's just use that scenario there. Are you going pretty shallow there?
Man, I tell you, it's certain days when I am targeting redfish in the back creeks, because that's where I really cut my teeth, patterning these redfish. I am, Joe, some days I'm stuck, right? I get in there and I get catching these redfish and I get so excited that I look down like, crap, I got to go. So I'm out there with my push pole in this puff mud, trying to push, like rocking the boat, like, okay, I'm stuck. I'm stuck back here with them now. Great. So some days I'm very, very shallow in the back creeks. Now in the Sound, it's a little bit different. You have a lot more water. You have deeper channels and river systems and creek systems and whatnot. So if I'm in the Sound, really it just depends on the type of spot, But if you're in the back creeks, me personally, I'm shallow, because if I'm in a back creek, I'm going to be targeting a lot of the outgoing tide at the lower phases, because that's when those big redfish come out. And they pull out of those creeks and off those back flats at the last minute. And that's when you see them pushing around. You see them boiling, right? You don't really see the birds so much in the back creeks, but you do see a lot of bait. Different sizes of bait really kind of cue you in on when they're going to be coming, when they're going to be pulling off the flat. And you can really see those redfish. And that's what I love more than anything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't mean you can't catch them in the deep water and in the Sounds. I do the same thing there too. I position myself around the same type of structure, the same type of areas that I would same style areas I would find them in the back creeks. You find that out in the Sounds as well. Oyster beds, grasses, depth changes, current. You find them there too. You have more water to deal with. And me, I'm all about, closing in that gap and really increasing my odds of catching fish. I really, if I'm not, 90-10, man. If I'm not in a feeding zone, I'm gone, brother. I'm out of there.
And that's a question that comes up a lot. Is that 10 minutes, 15 minutes? How long will you kind of fish a little area before you say, man, this is a dead zone?
So I power fish. I power fish a lot. Mainly I'm moving. When I say power fishing, I am fishing on the move. I'm usually rolling in with the current, slight trolling motor input to direct my boat and guide my boat. I'm constantly sticking down just to try an area. But if I'm going to fish an area and if I pull up and I fan cast an area, we'll just say creek mouth, for instance. If I'm fan casting this creek mouth and I'm targeting the top, middle, the bottom of the water column, and I've covered that entire creek mouth, I don't first say I'll fish it for 20 minutes. I'm not a guy that throws an anchor. If you're a guy that throws an anchor, maybe give yourself 15, 20 minutes. Get in position, slowly lower that anchor down, drift your boat back using your anchor line, get into position, fish that area. If you're fishing live bait, you have to sometimes wait for the fish to come to you. I power fish, I go to them. So if you're anchored out and you're waiting, I would say give it 15, 20 minutes. But don't sit there too long, right? Because the longer you sit, the more this water drops out and it completely changes the type of area you're in or the type of area you want to go to next.
Yep.
And that brings me into another topic is pre-planning. You have to pre-plan. In this low country area, you have to pre-plan your trip. If you don't get out there, excuse me, and have 4 or 5 spots to target in that area, you're gonna do yourself a really bad injustice, because you're gonna fish this area, you're not gonna catch any fish, you're gonna stay there too long, and you're like, man, the fish were here. This was my honey hole. This is my spot. Jerry said, go here and fish here, but they're not here. Now what do? Pre-plan. Get a few spots in mind. Have those spots make sense with a tide cycle too. If you're going to fish a creek mouth on an outgoing, know that at dead low tide, that creek mouth may not be good anymore.
Yep.
So no, you need to pull back and go to somewhere else where there's a drop off a ledge or whatnot. So you gotta pregame. If not, you're going to waste a lot of time. And that's what I did in the beginning. I wasted a lot of time. Now, some days I waste time on purpose because I want to get into the backs of these flats. I want to get to these choke points, and I want to target and time when these redfish are coming out. Because sometimes each creek system operates a little differently. But if I can time those fish, or what I call pattern those fish, I got a redfish spot for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Because these redfish are not going to go, right? People think fish move miles and miles down the river. In the wintertime, maybe a little bit. But generally, no, they're pattern specific. Yep. They go from the house to McDonald's and back every day. And that's what they do.
Yep.
So if you can catch them and find out when they're passing a certain point, when they're on this oyster bed, at what tide height, key that in. You look at a tide chart, you pull up the Smart Fishing Tides or the app that you guys have, which is incredible. And you can figure out, okay, here's the tide. Here's where my redfish are going to be. Okay, Thursday. Fishing Thursday at this spot. You can really
talk a little bit more about how long are you doing your pre-trip plan? I assume like the night before. Like walk me through. You mentioned smartfishingtides.com. Where else are you going?
Dude, my pre-game plan never ends. It's insane. I have such a really great network, and a shout out to all my guys out there, Steven, Ray, Mark Munn, all these guys that I'm constantly bouncing ideas off of. We're constantly talking fishing, talking spots, tides, like, hey, flood tide's coming. Where's this on this flat? How much water needs to be on this flat to get here? Like we're constantly talking pre-game in this. But if I was a beginner, I would go into it and I would say, okay, let's start off by today is Monday. I want to fish Friday. Let's not worry too much on the weather because the weather changes constantly. We know that. So about Wednesday or so, let's really start digging our heels in and figure out where we want to go. So I'll start with weather. What's the winds doing? If the winds are hard out of the east, I'm going nowhere near the sound because it's going to be rough. I fish a 16-foot skiff, and to get to these barrier islands and around the sound where I like to fish, it's just not comfortable. Not to mention I got a bad back. But start with weather. Then I look at my tides. The tides is going to tell me where specifically I need to fish. If I want to target fish on a high tide cycle, I'm going to go here. If it's a low tide, I'm going to go here. If I'm in the middle of a tide cycle swing, then it's going to kind of be a transitional period for me, and I can try a couple other spots and get them either coming or going. But definitely figure out where you're going to go based on the tides, based on the weather. And all of that is on that app that you guys have made, man. It's insane.
Yep.
The strike score. Yeah, it's great, man. And, I was actually just showing one of the guys I work with, Lieutenant Dan. He's a great guy. He may come over to the Insider group. He's close. But Dan, if you're watching this, man, I explained this to him yesterday, that Smart Fishing Tides is insane. It gives you all of that data, and it gives you the feeding zones, right, of when the best time projections to fish. Now in the summertime, the map the graph kind of looks the same. It's twilight, morning, twilight, evening.
Yep.
But it gives you a calendar laid out of those indicators that say, hey, this is the best day to go fish. So if you want to lean on that heavily, which it's not a bad idea, I've done it and actually patterned it to be successful. Look at that thing. Say, well, it shows Sunday is a little better day to fish than Saturday. Cool, let's go Sunday. Weather, tides, plan trip around that.
And wait till you see what we have next. It'll be insiders only, but it's called Strike Spots. So it's based on all that science-based intel and the wind, all of that. And it's not going to show you like a GPS spot, but it's going to show you the areas in each spot, like in Georgia, in Florida, in Texas, et cetera, where to fish, and then even tips on how to fish it, position it, what lures, baits to use. We've been working on it a while, so we're pumped. So it's really funny. Tony, obviously, one of our fishing coaches. I assume most people listening know who Tony Acevedo is. He's been with us for quite some time, and the dude catches a lot of fish, right? I mean, he's got more pictures and videos than I know what to even do with. And a lot of people assume that he must live right near the water. And what most people don't know is he lives in Orlando. If you guys know Orlando, Disney World, there ain't no saltwater anywhere close. But one thing that's interesting about him, because he has to drive an hour to get to Titusville into Indian River and all that area, where at least an hour, that dude, he puts so much time off the water. Like, he doesn't want to get skunked. If he gets skunked, that's a long ride home getting skunked. And which he rarely ever does. So he's put so much time in, and even the whole drive there, he's thinking through that entire game plan. That dude is prepared. And ironically, I used to live on the water in Tampa. My wife and I did before we had our third child and realized we couldn't afford to do that and we needed some help. And guess what? I've got skunked all the time because I would go out with literally no game plan. I'd just walk in the backyard and, fish for 10 minutes. There's nothing there. And I think you almost get sloppier when you live on the water. I was proof of it. I saw myself doing it. I was like, man, well, no wonder I didn't catch. I didn't even look at the tides. I just walked out the backyard thinking, oh yeah, it looks like some bait out there. I'll catch fish. I just want to harp on that because that pre-trip planning and being prepared and having a game plan is critical. It is the difference between you go out there and maybe getting a couple strikes and catch an inshore slam. It really is.
It is. You guys talk about it, maximizing your time on the water. There's no better way to put it. Our time is so valuable. So why just stumble out there? Now, if you want to get out there and plug around a little bit and, have some drinks with your friends and enjoy the sun and put some sunscreen on, go for it.
Yep.
But if you really want to get out there and catch fish and maximize your time and not waste time, you need to pre-trip and you need to join Salt Strong and learn.
Yeah, baby. Hey, real quick, let's talk about Low Country Fishing. That's the YouTube channel. Want to give you a shout out and make sure everyone listening goes and subscribes to it because it's super helpful. Obviously, Dan is doing some stuff that you can't find on here for our insider members in Low Country. But talk about that. Talk about the channel and some of the. I'm going to sort by most popular videos and see which one did the best.
The first one,
the easiest way to catch redfish in Low Country.
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually the very, very first video I ever filmed. I was out fishing with my buddy Ray. Him and I crunked a few videos out in the very beginning, but we were just out there fishing, doing what we do. And, that's what Low Country Fishing YouTube is all about. It's not about getting out here, catching a fish, a bunch of babbling and saying things that don't make sense. And this is the lure I'm using, and here's my fish. I'm educating you guys. I'm telling you exactly what I'm doing, why I'm doing it. I take what's in my head and I try to project it.
Yep.
I try not to over talk it. Some fishing, some fun music, some cool graphics, some cool editing. Try to keep my videos about 12, 14 minutes, somewhere around there. So I'm not taking up too much of your time.
Yep.
But I wanted to put something together to really showcase this beautiful area, this Low Country, this Georgia, South Carolina area that I fish and target the most because so many people are struggling. Put Low Country Fishing together to help people. I take a lot of the tactics and basically all the tactics and principles that you guys teach and we teach on Salt Strong, and I apply it and I show people how to apply it to these waters. So it's no myth that I get out here and catch fish. There's no myth why or how. It's directly influenced by what you guys have taught me and I have learned and found a way to apply it. So if you guys want to get out there and you want to see some cool catching footage and enjoy a little bit of instruction along the way, check out Low Country Fishing. Now, I also have an Instagram an Instagram page.
Yeah.
Got it fired up. So what I do with an Instagram is I do a little bit of pictures and stuff, some behind the scenes, what kind of goes into it. If I do a trip, I'll kind of go in there and take some pictures that weren't on the video that didn't make it because not every video or not every fish caught makes it on YouTube because of my time constraints.
Yep.
But if you guys just check out Dan from Savannah at Instagram, follow me, check me out that way. That'd be awesome too. But yeah,
Dan from Savannah.
That's it, man. It's catchy. I was thinking like, okay, if I'm going to do this, I need to find some way to get catchy, kind of like diamonds, just something fun. And it absolutely, it just stuck. So
I love it.
Dan from Savannah on Instagram and Low Country Fishing at YouTube.
Yeah. And if I know a lot of our listeners are in the vehicle and we always put everything on saltstrong.com/podcast where we keep them all. We'll put all that in the show notes and we'll feature a couple of these videos. And then of course, definitely go subscribe to both Instagram and YouTube. And if you want more of Dan from Savannah or Savannah Dan, there it is, Low Country Fishing. Come join us in the Insider Club. We've mentioned it quite a few times. There's a reason we're both really passionate about it. It is about teaching. It's about community. It's about network. It's about, friendships. I use the word family all the time because that's what it feels like. There's no cursing. There's no belittling. There's no negativity. It's just positive people who want to go out there and catch fish, create some memories, have some fun. And now, saving money on tackle, which is another cool bonus. That was why I was late for our call is, dude, if you guys made it this far, I'll share with what's going on. So we're going all in on making sure that our members can justify it, not just from the how-to and the community, but from saving money on tackle. So we put a $750,000 tackle order in, and that's not going to all happen at once. Obviously, with this COVID, it's staggered. But that's a lot of tackle. That's with our, we're obviously getting a discount to give our members 20% off. So it's a whole lot more in terms of retail dollars. And so we're all in, we had to get, a loan for this, and we're all in to help our members out. So, and the cool news too, it's what works. We're not going to be a Bass Pro and have a million SKUs of all kinds of stuff that half the stuff in Bass Pro you don't need. Half the stuff catches more fishermen than it does fish. So we're going to have stuff that we personally use, that members like Dan personally use and can prove, hey, this works. here in our area. And just know that it's an exciting time to be an insider member, both on the how-to side with this strike spots we have coming and the tackle. It's going to be fun.
Dude, I'm pumped, man. What you guys are putting out for these insider members is insane. Salt Strong is getting ripped off. I'm telling you right now.
No,
you should be charging more, but I get it. It's awesome, man.
Yeah,
thanks for what you do.
Yeah, we're trying to impact as many people as we can, and we have it priced. Now, you said it's 27 cents a day if you pay annual, and that's less than a whole lot less than a cup of coffee from where I'm from.
Me too.
So, brother, thank you so much. Dan from Savannah, go check out his YouTube channel, subscribe to it, follow him on Instagram, and come join us in the Insider Club where you'll see our faces there every day, posting in the community, having fun. It's just a great place and a great community now. Probably by the day this goes live, we'll be right at like 16,000 members. It's growing that fast. So it is really, really wild. So, brother, we appreciate you. And guys, everyone, appreciate the time. If you made it this far, hit us up, leave us a comment. Any other questions you have for Dan or myself, let us know and we'll get on it. We out. Peace.
'Cause fishing, it's in my soul. It was